We have come to the end of a debate today on a topic that touches on so many aspects of our lives individually and also us as a society. The amount of feeling and the long number of speakers are indicative of how important this topic is. As to the amendments that were proposed, the Workers' Party does not object to the amendments and looks forward to scrutinizing the action plans to be proposed. We hope to see concrete steps taken to effect change, whether through legislative amendments or policy overhaul. Be that as it may, I would again reiterate that when we decided to bring this private member's motion as a party, my colleagues and I felt strongly about how the issues we raised affect both themselves and also the women and men in our lives. Mr. Leon Pereira spoke about the three women in his life, his mother, his wife, and his daughter, and how he wants to see a world where women were no longer boxed into long-held stereotypes. He shared how men and employers have key roles to play in abolishing sexist attitudes and how we can accelerate progress by having anti-discrimination legislation while working together to teach the principles of gender equality to our children. I thank Minister of State Sun Xueling and Parliamentary Secretary Rahayu Mazam for giving an update on government policies supporting women in various areas. My Sengkang GRC colleague, Mr. Louis Chua, shared why it is important that our care-related policies do not ironically perpetuate stereotypes and reinforce notions on gender roles. Both men and women must not be forced to make the false choice of choosing between work or family, and we need to ensure adequate support is granted to our caregivers. He also mentioned the important role of fathers in caring for their children, all the while leading by example, as told by the number of times his little 2-year-old featured in our Zoom calls while he was on Papa duty. Mr. Vikram Nair recounted what participants had shared at a dialogue session he attended, including their experiences of facing discrimination at the workplace during pregnancy or difficulties in re-entering the workforce after devoting several years to caregiving. Ms. Raisa Khan spoke about sexual violence and survivor care. She noted that we need to ensure that survivors are given adequate support to ensure that they are able to address the trauma they faced. She also touched on 3 pressing issues in her community: female genital cutting, polygamy, and the hijab. Dr. Shahira Abdullah called for a whole-of-society and community mindset shift, including for boys and their caregivers. She said that women should be the allies of each other and act in solidarity with women from marginalized groups. I thank Ms. Yeo Wan Ling for her speech on the contributions of women in the labor movement, and Ms. Tin Pei Ling for reminding us of the aspirations of Women Motion in 2017 and for supporting the amended motion. Mr. Zulkarnain Abdul Rahim mentioned the important role of men and fathers in this conversation, and Ms. Cheng Li Hui, I thank her for her views as well on egg freezing and fertility support. Mr. Gerald Giam, in his speech, called for more openness in our immigration and visa policies for foreign spouses of Singapore citizens to strengthen the Singapore core, for more support to be extended to single parents, and for policies to promote flexible work arrangements, all of which benefit both men and women. Ms. Sylvia Lim focused on the challenge facing political parties in Singapore in finding sufficient numbers of able and willing women to step up to being parliamentary candidates and political leaders. She noted that while Singapore has made progress, greater success was more likely if the social norms supported gender equal choices. She was cautiously optimistic that the element of political competition would pressure political parties to field more able women in order to gain support from a more demanding electorate. Mr. James Lim shared how gender equality and female empowerment can be a force for economic progress. He has raised how our female labour force participation rate has actually trended down over the past 5 years, and the male participation rate has consistently outstripped that of women. Moreover, the most lucrative and fastest growing sectors remain male-dominated, and reduced participation could be symptomatic of the difficulty that women face in breaking into such jobs. To make matters worse, the gender pay gap in Singapore remains substantial. He also proposed various measures to support women and working mothers and to address the gender pay gap. These are just the main topics relating to the barriers to gender equality, and there are many more which I have received in the form of comments and emails. These topics range from the concerns raised about fertility challenges that women face and women's health in the form of the chronic management of common conditions like polycystic ovary syndrome and its associated comorbidities. To summarize, it is good to hear that across the aisle, we are in general agreement that gender equality has to be pushed to the forefront of national discourse. And since it is still Olympic season, it cannot escape our attention that changes are also sweeping through sports as well. It is notable that the Tokyo 2020 Olympics saw attention being given to the outfits of female Olympians, and many commented positively on the choice of the German gymnastics women's team and Norwegian beach volleyball women's team to wear attire that they felt most comfortable with. It is also heartening to note that female top athletes, such as Naomi Osaka and Simone Biles, are the ones who are leading the way in raising issues relating to mental health. While it is important to make our policy positions and stand clear, we must take tangible action to effect change. This is why we have brought up the various different proposals that we have in our 2020 manifesto, and to make a difference not only for women, but society as a whole. We have to enact real change in our legislation and government policies to address discrimination directly. This is clearly not a silver bullet, but an important next step to send a signal to set the tone for the foundational principle of gender equality that we should put at the forefront of all of our policies and laws. I started this debate by speaking about my maternal grandmother. She would be so happy to see how little girls today do not have to fight for a right to get themselves educated in Singapore and no longer need to hide books to read surreptitiously. But she would be first to say that we must not rest on our laurels and carry on working towards a world of gender equality. And now, I would also like to close with a big note of thanks to my father. He was born just after the war, the last of 10 children in an extremely traditional family who viewed boys as far superior to girls. After my sister and I were born, my mother told me that she felt a lot of pressure to try for a third child in the hope that they would have a boy. When she brought this up to my father, his answer was short and sharp. "What's wrong with my daughters?" he asked. I am incredibly grateful that my father has lived his whole life by these words, believing in supporting his daughters with his heart and soul to live our lives in accordance with our own choices, whether or not he agreed with us. And I know that I would not be here without this commitment that he has given us. I also do not think that he, as a lifelong workaholic at the workplace, would have expected himself to become so involved in the care and nurturing of his beloved grandsons in his 70s, which has been critical in supporting me in my own journey here today. I can only hope that many more of us show our wives, mothers, and daughters the same belief and love that I experience as we move towards greater gender equality. Madam Deputy Speaker, gender equality is not a partisan issue. It is not even just a women's issue. It is a men's issue. It is a societal issue. We are in this together. I hope our parliamentary colleagues will address these issues together, especially since our honourable colleagues have, by their own admission, said that they raise similar issues repeatedly. It is time for Singapore to take the next step. Thank you.